America and Israel should have learned certain lessons from Op Sindoor. I don't think Iran is losing this war. We won Op Sindoor. The Rafale is a masterpiece. It also has defensive capabilities which people don't understand. The Spectre did brilliantly in defending Rafale aircraft, even other aircraft which may have been flying in close vicinity of the Rafale.
Even other aircraft.
Yeah. Indian Air Force didn't lose 3 Rafales. I can put it there on a piece of paper.
Were there injuries?
Some of the air warriors, I think, lose limbs as well. They've been honored. Everything that the Indian Air Force was saying, the Indian Army was saying was correct. I can confirm that the US wouldn't be necessarily opposed to India acquiring the F-35, which by the way is cheaper than the Rafale. Their HQ-9 and their HQ-16, they failed miserably.
Pakistani spies were hunting for S-400 units.
Few people were arrested as well.
Pakistan has spies deep inside Indian territory.
Spies तो होते ही है.
आप तो ऐसे बोल रहे हैं हाँ ठीक है धुरंधर तो चलता ही रहता है इधर उधर. Namaste sir, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Vad?
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for coming. And your new book is out. Your first book, actually, The Sky Warriors. Let me show it.
There you go.
Operation Sindoor unveiled. So this is actually the official story of Operation Sindoor as told by Indian Air Force officers. Official, unofficial, we can say.
So that's an interesting question because it is official in a sense because you've got the accounts of Indian Air Force warfighters. It's unofficial in a sense because there is a lot of analysis there, including all of the satellite imagery, which is stuff which I worked on. Including the analysis of weapon systems, face-off between weapon systems. In fact, there is something written in the beginning over there where I say that this analysis stuff is mine and not the Air Force's. So it's sort of official in terms of what the Air Force has said, but the analysis is entirely mine.
It's a great privilege that you got to sit down with the commanders and the people who were running the show in Operation Sindoor, people on the ground. Who actually were in the line of fire and they did brilliantly and we are all very thankful for their service. What was the most fascinating find in your research?
The attack on the 7th itself, when we went in, there are accounts of our pilots getting into those missions where they face the threat of air-to-air missiles and surface-to-air missiles. And one thinks that if you're in Indian airspace, you don't face a threat. And you don't, and when people imagine a fight, they think that our pilots are going into Pakistani airspace and that they're fighting over there and whatever, there's a dogfight that happens. But there is a distance. But in modern warfare, that line, which is the international boundary or the line of control, is nothing but a line on a piece of paper. Because the threat that you face and the threats that they were facing on day 1, day 2 and all the days was very real. They could have been shot down. They could have been hit or they could have hit themselves. That's on day 1, when we went in and we hit those targets precisely, our pilots were operating under a great deal of threat. And they managed to come out of that quite well. I mean, our objectives were met. One of the pilots going into the mission, he's talking to he's in the back of the plane, a senior officer, the commander of the squadron. And I won't say they're jittery, but they're completely alive to the threats coming in. It's pitch black, it's night, it's dark. There are little dots in the sky. Those in many cases are missiles of other jets in the Indian Air Force going across. But they could be Pakistani missiles coming inwards, surface-to-air missiles or air-to-air missiles. And there's this one thing where the youngster in front says, "Sir, what's that?" And he says, "Relax, that's a star." All right. So think about it. It's all happening. It is the most human account, which, I dare say I've been able to get hold of. I'm sorry if this sounds a bit pompous, but that for me was the reason I wrote the book. Now, you could offer a macro level study of the war. On the 7th of May, 2025, the Indian Air Force under strict instructions did this. And these were the targets which were hit, and the geostrategic implications. The word strategy means geostrategic means nothing, but the geostrategic implications of this are A, B, C, and D. Right? Or I could talk about this guy saying, "Yaar, wo missile hai," and the other, "Sir, wo missile," he says, "Yaar, wo tara hai." So chill, to me, that was the story. And obviously, the stories fitted into a broader sort of explanation of why India did this. And we know why India did this. The Pahalgam terror attacks were horrific.
Yeah. And what struck me most was that after the Pahalgam terror attack, the people who were on leave, they came back on their own.
In some cases, they were told, "Yaar, mat aao, bula denge aapko. You chill."
Yeah. And they still came within 2 days.
Almost every officer who I interviewed, whether surface to air missile commanders or squadron commanders, brought up this one story. These are guys who are itching to get back. There was an Akash, a commanding officer of an Akash surface to air missile unit. He was deployed somewhere in the front line in the broader Jammu sector. I could tell you where, but then I need to shoot you. And his guys were like coming and they were like, they were hopping onto the top of buses. They were getting to a place, there were roadblocks over there, and these guys are like, no, I have to report over here, and the cops over there on the ground are saying that nahi, kahin nahi jana hai. We don't have any orders. So, and they returned. I mean, it was their job.
The one story that is there, like everybody is talking about Rafale.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, with another purchase coming in, so everybody is saying, should we buy it or not? And it's going on for many years now. You talk to the pilots who were, flying Rafale and who conducted operations. What was the one moment that defined the usability or the, that we needed Rafale in this fight? That it was absolutely necessary in Operation Sindoor. What was that moment like?
The Rafale is armed with a missile called the Scalp. The Scalp is a subsonic, extremely expensive, extremely precise weapon, air to surface, which gives you pinpoint accuracy in flying through very densely protected airspace. It is very robust and resilient against jamming, for example, and it hits really high value targets. That's the the Meteor flies with the Rafale. The Rafale has the fire control system and the radar to actually guide, when required, the Scalp missile, and then it flies by itself. The Rafale is a masterpiece, both in terms of offense and in terms of defense. It fires a missile called the Meteor missile. We haven't really heard very much about its use in the IAF at the moment. But in the context of long-range or ultra-long-range air-to-air warfare, where you're looking at hitting targets from one aircraft to another at ranges at 200 kilometers, possibly a little bit more than that, that Meteor missile will be a game-changer and is a game-changer in the context of aerial warfare. It also has defensive capabilities which people don't understand, and I write extensively in this book about that. There's a suite called Spectra. It is arguably the most advanced defensive suite anywhere, and I have no reason to believe that on a day when there were potentially attacks across the line of control and the international border, missiles incoming into Indian territory, the Spectra did brilliantly in defending Rafale aircraft, potentially defending even other aircraft which may have been flying in close vicinity of the Rafale.
Even other aircraft?
Yeah.
How does that happen?
If you fly in the close vicinity, even though the formations that we employed were mixed formations in many cases, if you were flying alongside a Rafale into a certain area, and the range, of course, is classified of its various defensive systems, you could technically come under the cover of the Spectra's defensive systems. So what are these defensive systems? So it has, besides anything else, something called DIRCM, Directed Infrared Countermeasures, which basically ensure that incoming infrared missiles are confused and are unable to actually hit the aircraft. It has a towed decoy system as well. We don't know if that was fully deployed or at all deployed during Op Sindoor, and if it was, it's completely guarded as a secret. But that's meant to ward off incoming infrared and radar-guided air-to-air missiles and surface-to-air missiles. It has the ability of using various sensors to spoof incoming missiles, and that's an absolute key part of what it's capable of. It is designed to penetrate heavily guarded airspace. And as I said, remember, the LC and IB is just a line. The Pakistan Air Force is very capable. And their aircraft were extremely advanced fourth generation aircraft, as were our aircraft. And therefore, in that environment, to have the ability offensively and defensively is absolutely critical. And I'm talking to you only with just a fraction. And I can go into great depth about the technical capabilities and characteristics of the Rafale aircraft, but there is a very good reason the Indian Air Force wants it, and the Indian Navy also. It is, in the present context, the best aircraft which is available for our armed forces, without a doubt. And what we will get now over the next 10 years would be even more advanced variants of this.
Because a lot of people were saying that after the 7th fight on the 7th midnight, and when Pakistani aircraft were in the air, and there was they launched BVR missiles and all that, and they claimed that they shot down 6 aircraft and 2 or 3 were Rafale. So based on that, people were saying that what is the use of buying such expensive aircraft when you have to ground them for a couple of days?
Okay, so I think it's important to clarify a couple of issues there, and I think the question you ask is a very relevant question because 1,000,001 people are asking that question. Firstly, the Indian Air Force didn't lose 3 Rafales. I can put it there on a piece of paper on the basis of my own analysis and on the basis of my own conversations.
Did they lose any?
No, I can't. No. So the Indian Air Force has said very clearly, upon being asked at a press conference whether there were losses, they said that all our pilots came home. That implies that there were losses. What the Indian Air Force has not gotten into is the number of losses. So whether it was 1, whether it was 2, or it was more than that. Now, as far as Pakistan's claims are concerned, I've seen some claims saying 15 also. Right? So these were, whatever their claims were, they were utterly, entirely inaccurate. And the book clearly states that as well. On specific aircraft which may or may not have been lost, the Indian Air Force has not identified those. Now, it's not that I didn't ask, and it's not that other journalists didn't ask, but we need to understand the entire issue of losses very carefully. And I'm not saying that this is my position. As a journalist, I believe it is my birthright to ask. I mean, at the end of the day, it's taxpayers' money, right? And yes, of course,
and there is no harm also in revealing those numbers. I believe that.
So that's where the Indian Air Force disagrees. Yeah. And their point is, in the context of great frictions which exist between India and Pakistan and India and China, for me to reveal that X fighter aircraft has sustained X losses on X day, A, it reveals my overall strength, B, it reveals potential inadequacies of that platform. I don't want to get into any conversation on that. Now, Op Sindoor itself is declassified. Is classified, and it remains classified. When I asked very specific questions in certain cases, I was told, Vishnu, that's a great question. Come back 25 years later, we'll have a cup of tea. I mean, there are secrets about the Kargil war, which I covered, which are still there. Secrets. I mean, look at the 1962 war. I mean, the report on the 1962 war is still classified. The Henderson-Brooks Commission report, one of the parts is still classified. Of course, many people may have read it, but that's another story. But it's classified. So what I would suggest is, and I think it's important also to look at the situation in West Asia. Has the US, and this is not justification, and I don't want it to sound like justification for the Indian Air Force or the government not getting into losses. But let's take a look at what others do. In West Asia, there is satellite imagery which has emerged of the primary surface-to-air missile THAAD system losing their primary air search radars and their targeting radars. Each one costs approximately $500 million to build. It takes months to build one. Apparently, Iran has knocked out a couple of them. Has America confirmed this? No, they haven't. This morning, there was news, and with photographs, of an AWACS aircraft, an E-3, which is one of the most potent platforms of the US Air Force, having been knocked out on the ground. Has the US confirmed it at the time? And it's been many, many hours, of this having been reported with pictures. No. Maybe they will in the future, but they haven't immediately done that.
But they are revealing the losses in aircraft.
They are revealing the losses of aircraft when there have been fatalities. So there was an AWACS aircraft, two mid-air refuelers, which had a mid-air collision, and one of the planes made an emergency landing, one of them crashed, and I think 6 people got killed in that. Even if you take a look, this is where the Indian Armed Forces have not failed, and I hope this remains the case. When a soldier gets killed, you have to reveal that publicly. During the Galwan clashes, we did reveal that there were clashes and X number of soldiers were killed in that. And thank heavens we've not gone into this absurd level of secrecy where we don't reveal deaths. Now, in this particular case, not one person died. And the Air Force is smart enough to know.
Were there injuries?
There were injuries. I think, but I don't know about. There were certainly injuries, and we've seen that as well. We've seen some of the Air Force, some of the air warriors, I think, lose limbs as well. They've been honored. There were civilian casualties as well.
Yeah, civilian massive. I think more than 15.
There was more than 15. There were schools which were struck by the Pakistanis in the Poonch area. In fact, Shiv Arur, my colleague, went and reported from one of them. I was actually anchoring in the studio and we saw the extent of devastation there. So those, civilian casualties were there as well. But what is clear on the basis of satellite imagery, and I think this is important because satellite imagery is very important to my own work, is that there was nothing substantive, if at all anything, which was struck by the PAF on frontline Indian Air Force bases. Whereas any amount of satellite imagery, which I have produced first, in fact, on my stories, proved the extent of the IAF's hits on, not just on the 7th when the terrorist camps were struck, but also on the 9th and 10th. And this book has all of those pictures. When these satellite images came up, and as I mentioned, we broke them first on NDTV, it proved to me that everything that the Indian Air Force was saying, the Indian Army was saying, was correct. Because the pictures that we were broadcasting, these were images, satellite images from Maxar, which is now called Vantor, were independently procured. And they were not hand-me-downs. There were a few which were, many of them weren't. And I have tracked till a few weeks back the impact of those hits. So, for example, in Murid, there is this one hit. There's this one hit on a building in Murid. There were two in Murid. One was an underground facility. Another one was a building. And it appeared that there were all little holes in the building. And we went to the Air Force and said, I've procured the satellite picture. And what is that? Those are our penetrator weapons. Very good. Penetrator weapons, excellent. And then we let it pass because it didn't really show like a kaboom kind of moment. But then what did Pakistan do? They put a green tarpaulin on top of that, and I've reported that. Then a few months later, it became one massive red tarpaulin on top of that. And the last story which I did, which was a few weeks back, based on the latest satellite imagery, is that it's gone. The structure has been taken down. So when the Air Force said that they struck, and they struck hard, and they penetrated that structure, they were correct. They weren't lying. And their analysis wasn't wrong. It was completely correct. If you take a look at what happened in the hangar in Bholari, and that's one of the images which is fairly defining in this particular book, it's actually this one.
Yeah.
And you can zoom in if you want on this particular image. This is where the Indian Air Force is fairly certain that there was a Pakistani AWACS platform, Airborne Warning and Control Systems platform, which was kept. And it was, they believe, in the strike, it was destroyed. I've tracked what happened to this hangar. They tried to repair it. And then, and this is all with satellite pictures, and it's all there in my reports. And it's not necessarily here in this book, which has just that strike image. And the latest one is now they're having to take it down, the roof completely down, because evidently they've been unable to fix it. So on day one, when the Indian Air Force said that we've hit them and we've hit this very, very hard, they were correct. And therefore, the intention to do this book was based on the fact that we won Op Sindoor.
Coming back to the original question, you are convinced that we needed Rafale.
I remain convinced. 100%.
Now the question is, how many do we need? Is the question of 42 squadrons or 60 squadrons or 75 squadrons, does that question remain relevant in today's time?
It does.
Because, or the quality matters more than the quantity?
Both. 114 Rafales will likely get signed on. The deal is not yet through. We already operate 2 squadrons of Rafales. The variants we'll be acquiring ultimately will be upgraded variants of what we operate now, and the existing ones presumably will be upgraded to that particular standard. It's built in a particular way where upgrades can be incorporated very fast. In many cases, it's a software upgrade. The Indian Navy is acquiring 26. That's a confirmed number. So the INS Vikrant, our aircraft carrier, made in India, will be operating this particular aircraft. The problem with the Rafale isn't what the Rafale can do. It is that air power has graduated to the use of stealth platforms. The Chinese have already deployed, not manufactured, deployed, it is believed, 200 plus J-20 jets. Anybody who says that ye Chinese maal hai, chalti nahi hai, that's rubbish.
Yeah, true.
That's complete crap. I can't use that word on TV, but maybe on your podcast it flies. But India doesn't presently have a stealth option. Our own AMCA project is years and years, from being developed. The prototype has not even been rolled out. We are deeply invested in the Tejas aircraft. It's a lovely aircraft, but it is technologically, some would suggest, obsolete before it enters squadron service. I'm talking about the Tejas Mark II. We are now just in the Tejas Mark I. The Tejas Mark 1A has to also start entering service in large numbers. So therefore, given the fact that there are no stealth platforms available to us, the American F-35 has been offered, but with the condition that we rid ourselves...
Is it official, sir?
They won't have no problem with us. I think so. I think there was somebody who mentioned that the F-35 could be offered to... But with conditions. No, we can't. Because it comes with conditions. I can confirm that the US wouldn't be necessarily opposed to India acquiring the F-35, which, by the way, is cheaper than the Rafale.
Yeah.
All right, because
with the current rate. Yeah.
Because of the numbers manufactured, so economy of scale.
And wouldn't it come sooner also? Given that they produce 200 F-35s every year?
We'll never get it. Because it would mean that we have to give up the Russian S-400 surface-to-air missile system.
That's never happening.
Yeah, because their fear is that the S-400 sensors would be able to pick up the stealth characteristics of the F-35. In other words, its actual signature by radar. And that there'd be some super beam of information flowing to Moscow. Right? In other words, because Russia has invested massively in the S-400 and will be investing in something called the S-500 Prometheus as well. So India is very clear about that, boss. You have a great plane, but we aren't giving up on stuff which has done well for us. And I mean, this book talks about that.
Yeah, I mean, in this book, S-400 is definitely
one of the champions.
Yeah, I think...
Maybe the champion.
Yeah, the champion. Because the way you have explained the story of S-400 operating on the ground, it's crazy. And the details... People have to read it to believe it, because when the officers were operating it on the ground, they were doing it for the first time.
Yeah.
In an active conflict zone in South Asia.
Yeah.
So the way they operated, and it was all new for them also. They were just taking out safety of one after another, and then they launched it, and the way it functioned.
It soared into the night. A beautiful, beautiful weapon system. Should I read something?
Yeah, sure.
So this is the account of an Indian Air Force officer who was the commanding officer of S-400 surface-to-air missile unit in Adampur. And there are many stories of what he said. The Pakistan Air Force's attempt to throw in the CM-400, now that's a very fast missile which Pakistan attacked us with, did not succeed. But there were other threats closing in, human ones. While the PAF tracked Adampur from above, through radar networks and reconnaissance flights, people on the ground were hunting for the S-400's exact coordinates. The counterintelligence threat was serious enough to compromise the entire operation. It came as an eye-opener, Patni said. We captured people and handed them over to civilian police. Now, this has not really been reported that much. They were trying to give away our positions. Protecting the airbase from the PAF onslaught had made Patni's S-400 unit vulnerable. Their sensors had locked into his radar signatures, feeding targeting data to missile crews across the border. Patni was aware that the Pakistanis were hunting him. One of the advantages he had was that the S-400 system was road mobile. One of the projectiles came close. It had evaded the first layer of the Indian Air Force's defenses in that area, presumably, and was threatening to close in. It was engaged. We shot it down, says Patni. This was a challenging case. What happened next was a pleasant surprise. Villagers in the area who had seen the drone being taken out cheered. Everyone was on their rooftops. For them, the launch of the missile was like Diwali ka pataka chal raha hai. Diwali fireworks are going off, chuckles Patni, shaking his head. Villagers hailed Patni and his men as heroes, soldiers who would probably save their village from being struck by the enemy. The next morning, as the fighting abated, the villagers came out to celebrate. Now, this is Punjabi Sikh hospitality, and as you know, you get into that. There is no getting out until you share in the joie de vivre and the camaraderie of people over there. They brought sweets, refreshments, and homemade food for the battle-worn men. It was a touching moment for Patni and his team. They had not slept in days, and the pressure and need to focus was overwhelming. The unexpected hospitality and warmth around them gave them a brief respite. Even the sarpanch, a woman, came and said, "Sir, आपके लिए हमारा पूरा गुरुद्वारा का लंगर खुला है. आपको जब जो चाहिए खाना चाहिए आप बताइए." Right? I mean, this is just typical hospitality. But Patni wouldn't be distracted. I sent one of my non-combatants over there to thank everyone. He also sent the villagers gifts. The moment was brief. The unit would need to move again. Now was not the time to celebrate. There was work to do, engaging targets when necessary. But this is just so typically us, no? As a people, we like to celebrate. And nobody celebrates harder than Punjabis. Right? And so this sarpanch, she came out and she said, "You aren't going anywhere." Imagine the scene over there. I mean, it's been not distilled by way of censorship. I mean, he was.
I think this paragraph doesn't capture the emotions on the ground, actually.
And because, the Air Force officers, they speak, very precise, this happened. I mean, but I can certainly tell you, there would have been a scene which is absolutely hardcore Punjab. Everybody came out, "नहीं जाएंगे आप यहाँ से." हाँ,
और हमारे हमको निकलना पड़ेगा भाई,
निकलना पड़ेगा भाई, नहीं आप नहीं जाओगे. And then आप गुरुद्वारा खुला हुआ है, आप हमारे साथ लंगर पे आइए, आप ये खाइए, then everybody is happy and all that, and this guy is thinking, my God, यार, I have a war to fight, I have orders.
और वहां से मूव करना है क्योंकि उसको engage कर दिया, radar का reveal हो जाएगा location.
Exactly. Yeah. So think about that. I mean, these human stories are just fantastic. I mean, ultimately, that's why I wrote the book.
बहुत खतरनाक चीज जो आपने बताई. It's very dangerous the way, people on the ground, Pakistani spies, were hunting for S-400 units. And
few people were arrested as well. There were arrests of people on the ground who the Air Force's guards believed were tracking the physical movement of the S-400 units. They move, na? I mean, lots of these vehicles, they keep moving.
But don't you think this is such a huge thing that Pakistan has spies deep inside Indian territory?
No. Spies तो होते ही है.
आप तो ऐसे बोल रहे हैं, हाँ ठीक है, धुरंधर तो चलता ही रहता है इधर उधर. मतलब, is it that common? कि वो they get activated only when
that will be my next book, The Spies वाला James Bond.
अच्छा, लिख रहे हो क्या?
I'm joking. They would be spies, I mean, that's the suspicion. I don't know what happened of these people. Maybe they were released, maybe they weren't, maybe they are being, I mean, they were links, who knows.
But sir, the question that I asked about the quantity versus quality, right? It is in context of whatever is happening in Iran. Right, Israel and US are dominating the skies. They have complete, dominance as far as air power is concerned on Iran. But still, Iran is able to launch, asymmetric warfare. Correct. They are launching, right?
Yep.
And it's crazy the way they are operating.
Yeah.
Right. It's not graded response that we engaged in during the conflict.
Yeah.
It's very graded. Our response was very graded, and you explain it every day how it was. But they are not doing that. They are engaged in asymmetric warfare, and they are basically forcing US. They have forced actually to force them on the table. So, do you think that Pakistan or India will be learning some lessons from that conflict?
I think America and Israel should have learned certain lessons from Op Sindoor. It's been less than a year. Our airspace, and the book talks extensively about this, saw hundreds of Pakistani drones which were inside our airspace from Siachen to Gujarat. The numbers are actually revealed in the book. They came out with these numbers, and we faced a critical situation. They were looking to exploit our weaknesses. They were looking at us to launch our surface-to-air air missiles, to deplete our stocks, to get into an attrition scenario, and then they would perhaps attack using heavier weapons. In many cases, our army and our air force didn't fire surface-to-air missiles because the tracks of certain drones seemed to indicate that they'd fly into an area where there wasn't any real danger. You want to preserve your missile. Drone warfare, and we use drones extremely effectively. I mean, there was an HQ-9 or an HQ-16 Chinese-built surface-to-air missile system in the Lahore area, and there was video of it, of a Harop drone which sort of went and it plunged into a target, and I mean, they lost one of the units, one of the vehicles or radars or what have you of that particular unit. If one goes down, there is a good possibility of the entire unit going down until a replacement is found. These things don't have replacements like lined up ki bete usko le aao. I mean, So we use drones very, very effectively. There is every possibility that drones were used in taking out some of their radars in Chunia, Pastur. I'm not entirely certain if they were drones or not, but they were taken out, and chances are that they were. Drones were certainly used in other areas as well, particularly by the Indian Army. In taking out many of the terrorist camps. One of the things that worked brilliantly for the Indian Air Force and the Indian Army were jammers. Jammers are a very unsexy part of warfare. That, a fighter pilot, big jock, getting into his plane, helmet on and all of that, and missiles firing and all of that. Rafale, beautiful looking Su-30 with its nose like that. It's a little DRDO made jammer or some other imported jammers, which were incredibly effective. And had they picked up that lesson, and had they picked up the lessons that the Ukrainians have been using in the war in Europe, then perhaps they would have been better prepared to defend all of the oil refineries using one aspect of a defensive system, jammers. Jammers did so well.
But the fact that they didn't even think that Iran will be engaged in such kind of acts, they didn't even think about it.
I don't think Iran is losing this war. In fact, some would suggest, and I've said this in a podcast of mine, I had bricks fall on my head, that from a certain standpoint, Iran may be militarily winning this war. America and Israel are fighting this from a conventional standpoint, and as you correctly mentioned, Iran is fighting this from an asymmetric standpoint. They're using drones and ballistic missiles. We have a wonderful retired Indian Navy submarine commander who does a lot of game theory analysis, and he's written for us in the last couple of days, where he says that Iran's ability to sustain firing medium-range ballistic missiles, and particularly short-range ballistic missiles, could go on for several weeks more at the present rate of fire, and indefinitely when it comes to drones. A Shahid drone is approximately the size of this room. It's got a little piston engine. I mean, you're an engineer. It's not, you don't need a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility to put it together. It's got a fairly basic GPS-guided navigation module which goes in. It's got a very basic warhead. It flies over there and detonates. If you are not defending through jammers and other sensors, and then possibly surface-to-air missiles or even lasers, which the Israelis have started using, then that drone threat is insane. Now, when you have drones coordinating with each other, in other words, swarm drones, and it is believed that advanced variants of the Shahid can actually work together, and you have 100 of those flying in your direction, you knock out 95 of them. What if 5 get across and the target is an oil refinery?
Yeah. And how many oil refineries are there? If they manage to hit whatever they are preserving, they can easily hit that. And then it's all game over. Because everybody in the world will like it. We will actually go back to Stone Age. If that happens, COVID will look like a honeymoon for us.
Yeah, you're right. So we are in this position in the world. It's deeply worrying.
So I'm thinking from that perspective. Do you think Pakistan will also devise its own strategy for future conflict, given that the way we dominated their airspace? Do you think they will engage in asymmetric warfare, or do they not have that strategic,
They started asymmetric warfare before we did.
Yeah, of course.
Their response to our attacks was asymmetric warfare and conventional warfare all together. Massive, hundreds of drones deployed on consecutive days over
1,000 drones, I think, in one day.
Yeah, those numbers were crazy. I mean, it's there in the book, and it's a massive number of drones which were actually deployed. And look, I think one needs to understand, and this is what people don't understand in India, that there were many aspects of Op Sindoor where we were plain lucky. Given the capability of the Pakistan Air Force, given the availability of attack drones, it is to a certain extent not just the ability of our armed forces, but also luck that ensured that nothing major was struck in our air bases. For India to move forward, when the government says we need a Sudarshan Chakra, which is just words, but ultimately it is a defensive shield against missiles. This might cost you hundreds of billions of dollars, but you have to have it intact. We already have the S-400, which has got a capability which is anti-ballistic missile. Beyond that, we've got Indian-made endo and exo-atmospheric interceptors, much like what Israel has already deployed. Israel has a missile system called the Arrow. It's got different variants. One which intercepts incoming ballistic missiles exo and just about in space, and one is endo, in other words, within the atmosphere at a high sort of great altitude, but still within the atmosphere. We are developing that ourselves. Our own exo and endo atmospheric interceptors have been repeatedly tested. But this is something that has to be fully developed. Then you'd have the S-400. Then underneath that, you'd have systems like the MR-SAM. You already have systems like the Spider missile system, the Akash missile system. There's something called the Akash Prime that comes in. You'd have short-range missiles, surface-to-air missiles, and then ultimately lasers. In the case of Israel, the final layer of defense, which is useful against primarily incoming rocket projectiles and drones, are lasers. Now, this makes it's called the Iron Beam.
Yeah.
And it's at the first level of defense. There's the Iron Beam, there's the Iron Dome, then there is something called a David Sling, which uses a missile called the Stunner. On top of that, there is the Patriot missile system, which is American, and on top of that there is the Arrow. That's how they've got their pyramid working. We use different missiles and different systems, but the concept is the same, and we have to invest massively. We are already, but as a national policy on the development of extremely high-powered lasers. The reason is very simple. A single trigger push of a laser, which actually burns through an incoming drone, costs you about 2 cents. A surface-to-air missile, a basic one, can cost you $2 million.
Yeah. That was a big challenge, actually.
So when it comes to defending Amritsar from drones, this is the way you have to do it. I mean, you use what you have, but a large amount of your defenses, your terminal defenses, your final line of defense has to be this. Now, that will not work presently against incoming ballistic missiles.
But don't you think that given all this scenario, given what is happening in West Asia, and given what happened in Operation Sindoor with thousands of projectiles coming in, so don't you think that at some point of time you will actually run out of all those defenses, and then
in West Asia,
I mean everywhere.
Yeah.
So why?
That's why you need to
Don't you think
invest
that
in lasers.
Offensive is the best defense?
That's a very valid question.
You just go in and hammer. Don't just go for graded response that we went for.
So it's never as simple as that. It's offense plus defense. It needs to, or your operations need to fulfill a particular requirement that is stated by whichever political leadership is in power. In this particular case, our armed forces were told that, look, your targets are Pakistani terror headquarters, and nothing more than that. Pakistan decided to attack our military assets, which is when we attacked their military assets. What is the best part in many senses? Best is not the right word, but of Operation Sindoor was that it was actually 88 hours, maybe a couple of days beyond that, by the time it all stopped. Because otherwise, can you imagine two nuclear-armed neighbors going at it in an escalating battle? It had already escalated massively by the 10th. Massively. Let there be no doubt about that.
But if we had destroyed their defenses on day one, we would not have lost a single aircraft. Is it true?
It depends on what the objectives were. Did we want to get into a war with Pakistan, a full-on war? The answer is no. That's why the Navy was never deployed ultimately.
But surely we knew what the response would be. And we would anyway be going into that.
It is possible that we should have launched our attacks on terror training camps along with, direct attacks against the Pakistan Air Force. But I think that was not what they wanted to do.
Only the radar installations and all that.
It doesn't begin and end with that. I think there is a larger conversation on what the national philosophy or objectives in this particular attack were. What you're suggesting that, why didn't we hit the Pakistan Air Force on day one? We did. But after, the initial phase, there was a JF-17 which was down. My book actually talks about it. But whether we shouldn't have limited our response to Pahalgam to the Pakistani terror camps and hit Pakistan's military, I would suggest that the government strategy was correct. We don't want a war. We don't want a war. We have been forced into this response. There is a good line of thinking that you may not win a war. How do you define a win? We are massively populated, India and Pakistan. Do we want a scenario where you've got tens of thousands of people who've lost their lives? Do you want a scenario where our economy is driven into the ground? At the same time, as a nation, do you not respond when 26 of your civilians are killed? I mean, it is crazy. I mean, think about the choices that the government is forced with. And therefore, if the belief was that we have to respond.
We always think that what will our international image will be like. We are just saying that, okay, we have hit terror launch pads only. We are a responsible country, right? Don't you think this narrative always rises above the military needs or what we need to do, rather than, what we are forced to do because of our, whatever morality that we think that we as a responsible country should do?
I don't think they use the word responsible, but I don't think it's limited to responsibility. I think there is a very clear-cut examination of what we can do, what we want to do. I think your question is why on day one did we not hit more than... Yeah, that was not what we wanted to do.
And not even on second day. We didn't go all in that sense.
We certainly did.
It was all graded response, right?
No, on by day two, A, we were responding to the Pakistani drones. B, we were involved in missions to actually target their air defense network, to create holes in that, because these are called shaping operations. And on day 2 and day 3, those shaping operations were being carried out. What is a shaping operation? If there are holes in the air defense grid of the Pakistanis or their ability to actually look out, it means that you have the ability of potentially crossing the LC or the IB should it be required, or perhaps knowing areas where he has a weakness in looking out for you.
So we focused on creating all those weaknesses in those
shaping operations. And when we were ready to hit, we hammered them. On the 9th night and 10th. Most of the attack missions were happening at night, other than the 10th, when the second set we went balle in the morning as well. 3 hours later, they came to the ceasefire table.
I think on 10th only we put all the aircraft in the air during the day, right?
So just so that I'm absolutely clear about it, and this is another point which is completely misunderstood, and I want to put this on record. Despite what has been said and claimed by others, the Indian Air Force was operational on every single day of the war.
Because some people say
so that's wrong.
Aircraft were grounded.
No.
Day one. And they came back only on third or fourth day.
There should have been a far more clear explanation by our military leaders on this particular point, because that, our Air Force has been grounded. Do you think you're fighting a war and the Air Force has been grounded? Many of the pilots in this particular book, whose accounts I was saying that we were flying. We were flying constantly. So if there is a takeaway from this podcast, let it be this, that, I don't know where they were flying or at what distance from the LC or IB they were flying, but they were certainly operational. And they would have been ready for whatever mission was assigned of them in a dynamic scenario. Ye nahi ki Air Force बैठ गया, never happened.
But it is true that Pakistan Air Force was grounded.
No, the Pakistan Air Force, to a large extent, the Pakistan Air Force could have been grounded. Certainly operations in those air bases where their runways were cratered, their operations, the ability to fly would have been very, very restricted. They took hits on F-16s in Jacobabad. One of their AWACS was knocked out in the air. It was either an AWACS or an electronic intelligence platform, and certainly one on the ground as well. We hit their radars really heavily. And so they would still have been in a position to fight. This is a very capable Air Force, but with restrictions.
Sir, let's talk about some social media, couple of social media chatter or narratives that we saw during the war. One was that something happened over Sirsa. There was a video and there was a huge flash of light in the middle of the night, I think after 9th midnight, 10th early morning. And there was a huge flash. What happened? And then we went ballistic after that. So that was, some people said that, Fateh missile was fired at Delhi. Some said, no, it was at Adhampur. So what's all that about?
Well, firstly, I'll answer your question, but there was another rumor that there were drones which were headed to Delhi. And this book actually spells out on record, boss, that's crap. That never happened. I am not aware, and I have read all of those reports about Pakistan's deployment of ballistic missiles. It's never been confirmed to me that that was the case. What the book does confirm, based on my own questions to the Air Force, were the interception of CM-400 missiles, which in many ways are far more insidious than ballistic missiles. Ballistic missiles follow a certain trajectory. It's a parabola. In many ways, it's easier to intercept those than a hypersonic or a near hypersonic weapon like the CM-400, which comes at you from a relatively flattish profile and is able to maneuver in the final stages. Those were being intercepted by the S-400 as well, and which was a big achievement. And I mean, that is what they were trying to target the S-400 unit with. They failed in doing that. But whether Pakistan fired ballistic missiles or not, I've read all those reports. I don't have anything to add to that. I can neither confirm it because it was never confirmed to me. But what Pakistan did deploy, and this video of this, which is authentic video, are long-range rocket systems.
Achha. That we saw over Sirsa.
I don't know if it was Sirsa or not, but I've seen video out of Pakistan, an authentic video of them using multiple launch rocket systems. I mean, long-range, unguided rockets. Those were used.
एक और सर बात सुनने में आई थी, बहुत नैरेटिव चला था कि डिड वी हिट नूर खान nuclear installation facility there?
Look, I asked and I was told we didn't do anything in Noor Khan. Now,
did they wink after that? After saying that?
Did they wink while they were answering it, or was there a smile on their face, or whatever it was? I think Air Marshal Bharti, who was then he was Deputy Chief now, Director General of Air Operations, then he was asked this question and he gave an answer, and the Air Force more or less sticks to that.
And the way he answered, there are a lot of, memes and...
There are aspects of this. Op Sindoor is classified. And I think one should understand that this is not a tell-all on Op Sindoor. This is as much as I could dig and get out. And for them to accept that, all right, these are stories which are important and convey what the Indian Air Force ultimately did.
So this is all we will get for next 25 years at least, if not more.
It's a little less now than 25 years, because when I started writing it, it was from that date. Yeah. It's really up to the government to decide how much more. I believe there is a lot in this. For example, if you look at the cover of the book, the plane right on the top is a Rafale, and you can see right in the middle is that is the Scalp missile. This one. Yeah? All right. Okay. And this one is particularly interesting because the second one under in the middle, that's a BrahMos. Okay. And this one is the most interesting because under the wings is one missile here, the grey colored missile, and there's one on the other side which you can't really see that well.
The small one, right?
Yeah, it's not that small actually. That's an Israeli Rampage missile. And when I saw this, and this is a picture taken by a wonderful Indian Air Force officer, and I said that I really want this as the cover of the book. Will you give it to me? Because this shows all the weapons which have been used in Op Sindoor. I was told that it's a classified picture. I said, sir, itna bata diya, picture ko to chhod dijiye, whatever it is. And I was told, you ask for so much, yaar, how much do you think, I'm just an officer in the Air Force. I'm not God, so, how do you expect me to actually be able to clear? But they did clear this image. It had because nobody had really known that the Rampage had been integrated with the Sukhoi 30, which is what this cover actually showed. And the reason it was declassified was pure luck.
Achha.
Pure luck. Because they decided just a few days after or before my request that they would fly a massive air display over the northeast, I think it's the parts of Assam, where they decided to showcase this missile slung under the Sukhoi 30. So I went back to them, sir, aapne to dikha diya, sir. This is your picture. Now can I please have this? They said, go ahead.
तो आपका कंट्रीब्यूशन है थोड़ा सा उसमें. सर ये बताइए कि पाकिस्तान, यू टॉक टू लॉट ऑफ IAF ऑफिसर्स, और जब वो ग्राउंड पे ऑपरेशन कर रहे थे, वो कौन सा ऐसा वेपन सिस्टम था फ्रॉम द पाकिस्तानी साइड? Can I tell you a really
interesting story? I'm sorry, I just...
Please.
It just struck me. So I was waiting for clearance for the book. And I was really tense ki, this is going up the Air Force chain, down the Air Force chain, back and forth, this, that, and the other, that, there's no chance that this is going to clear. I wasted so much time to write this book. And there are many in the Air Force who are really trying to get this published because they believe there is merit in the book. So I was in that frame of mind. I was in Davos, Switzerland. This was in the month of January this particular year. There was a Pakistan event which was taking place in breakfast over there. And there was a very fine gentleman who I had reached out to, and I wanted to know if the Pakistani Prime Minister, who was also there, would actually give an interview or do whatever. I mean, I know as journalists, it's our hardest thing to ask. So he says, no, but why don't you come and see or whatever it is. And the foreign minister was also there or whatever. So I went over there. Half of them were very warm with me. The half of them were like, my God, ye kahan se pahunch gaya? And they said, your camera has to be out. So I'm thinking, it's a very expensive camera. I cannot leave it out on the road. I mean, my camera person can't just say, sir, you have to do this. And I was having this chat with the organizer of that Pakistan breakfast in Davos. And he told me, son, did you know that in the 1971 war, I was possibly the first Pakistani officer to escape from an Indian prisoner of war camp. I managed to travel across your country because I was being held in the northeast and return to Pakistan.
Crazy.
Right? And young man, I'll give you my book. And by the end of this thing, he gave me his book. Usi beach, ek phone call aa gaya. And now, I have a Rafale on the cover of my phone, right? I have a Rafale on the cover of my phone. So like, if you just sort of see it, Rafale nikal, believe me, it's there. So when it's here, you can see that there's a Rafale over here, right? Yeah. So I'm standing there, this is Rafale, and he sees a plane or whatever. And then there's a wing commander such and such calling. So I'm like, man, this is that wing commander who's going to tell me, yaar, you're sinking or you're swimming. I mean, is the book going to be cleared? So I picked up the phone as he's telling me about how he escaped. And Vishnu, your book is cleared. Yeah, your book is cleared. So I just found that amazing that while I'm talking with a wonderful gentleman, soft-spoken, wonderful. I mean, he's the first Pakistani to actually escape from the 1970 Indian prisoner of war camp. My book on the Indian Air Force on Sindoor is just cleared. They couldn't find better timing. Sorry, you were asking.
Yeah, so I was asking about you talk to so many officers. Which Pakistani system, or should I say Chinese system, that they thought that it was most challenging for them to tackle?
They didn't tell me what was more challenging or less challenging to tackle. They didn't. But I went into a great deal of that in terms of my own analysis of the weapon systems which were used. There are 2 or 3 weapon systems and aircraft which are particularly substantive. One is the J-10. It's a very advanced 4th generation fighter aircraft, what they would consider their equivalent to the Rafale. It's not, but it's a very advanced aircraft. It fires a missile called the PL-15. It's a very long-range air-to-air missile. It's believed to have a very robust range. There is the JF-17, which Pakistan has been building in large numbers, while we have been languishing with our Tejas production. Not as advanced as the J-10, but certainly advanced enough. Again, it's something which proved to be seriously deployed by the Pakistanis. They'd also deployed it when we attacked Balakot. I mean, the day after, when there was the air battle which took place. This was a platform which was deployed. The CM-400, which I write about like massively in this book, near hypersonic Pakistani, cruise missile with an anti-radiation seeker. It's designed to knock out. Besides it can be used in an anti-shipping role as well, but it's designed in the context of the Air Force.
It's called carrier killer, right?
Yeah, it depends on how you deploy it. It was deployed over here to take out our missiles, our radars to our missiles in an anti-radiation mode. So these are a couple of systems which are very advanced. Let there be no doubt. But equally speaking, their HQ-9 and their HQ-16 ultimately couldn't deter they couldn't ward off the attacks of the Indian Air Force on the 9th and 10th. They failed miserably. And the book is full of these satellite pictures of hits. They couldn't do a thing against our missiles. They couldn't intercept them.
what would the lessons be for Pakistan and India in a future conflict regarding their systems?
For India, the defense, and we've already spoken about this, the need to protect our border areas from relentless attack, whether it's drones or rockets, is something we need to invest in massively. Laser-based defenses are absolutely critical. For Pakistan, it's a reality check about where their air bases are deployed. I mean, we've got the advantage of being of depth. Many of our air bases are available at depth as well. Most of their frontline bases are right near the border, and so are therefore much more vulnerable.
But आखिरी में the way it ended, we were completely dominating Pakistan on 10th.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it stopped and people were very disappointed, right? And
no, I must confess I wasn't disappointed.
You were not.
I was
saying
relieved.
that people...
I have spent a career covering war. I was 24 years old when I covered Kargil. God knows how I got out of that in an area which was being heavily artillery shelled. My own stupidity, I went to places to see kya ho raha hai type thing. And, I mean, you realize with the benefit of age how horrible war is. I've done 3 stints on the ground in Ukraine. I've been to areas where women were allegedly raped by retreating Russian soldiers. I have been to the Congo where there was a horrific ethnic genocide which was taking place. I spent a month and a half in Afghanistan, getting into Afghanistan and being over there. I have seen the worst of war, and I don't wish it upon anybody, and I don't want to wish it upon India. This is an account of people who are involved in this. I don't want to come across as a warmonger because...
No, obviously it's not about... It's about necessity.
Bit of a threat. Yeah. So I am deeply grateful that this war ended when it did. And if anybody says that, we were in the ascendancy, why didn't we keep doing that? Firstly, we were about to do that. This book also let slip one important bit of information, that we had fighters in the air. When the order, they were told abort mission. They came back. They were going to hit something else. I have an idea of what it was, but I can't tell you. But it's an idea. They wouldn't confirm it to me.
Okay.
So war is a horrible thing.
No, I'm saying that because not just that we were in advantageous position, but many people thought that this is not punishment enough on Pakistan because they keep killing people like that.
And the Red Fort
they keep
attack
slaughtering
happened.
it. Yeah.
And I ended this book
by
actually saying that we did all of this, and then still the Red Fort attack happened.
Prime Minister said that this is not over, and if they attack us again, we will do it.
So obviously the government needs to gauge when it's going to do it. It has to gauge every scenario, and whether they are physically in a position, the Air Force or the Army, Navy are in a position to do that. What are the larger consequences of it? You can't. It's one thing for political leaders to say whatever they want. And in this particular case,
but we didn't even blame Pakistan, right?
There were investigations. We did blame Pakistan.
Okay.
There's an FIR report as well. I was there actually reporting when shortly after the Red Fort attack happened, right at the place where it happened. I spent the next day, all day there as well. But the FIR report clearly talks about links to Pakistan.
But then what the Prime Minister said while posing Operation Sindoor in 2025, then what he promised didn't come true.
But the time and place is the choosing of, or is our choosing. I mean, the assumption that you hit us today and we'll hit you tomorrow isn't correct. And it's equally true that realistically speaking, despite what political leaders may say, you can't keep hitting immediately on and off. It's just not possible. You have to weigh the costs as well. This entire decision of going to war is a scary decision.
Yeah, but we have to do it.
We have to do it, and we have to think hard before we do it.
To achieve some deterrence or to inflict some punishment, we have to do it, but we must know that when to, pose it also.
Correct.
Because that is more important. And in your opinion, as you said, this was the right time to pose it.
I'm glad this ended when it did. We don't want war unless it's absolutely necessary.
Do you think we achieved some deterrence?
I do believe that Pakistan has been given a very clear signal that if you go and do this sort of thing, the possibility of an Indian attack is there. We abrogated the Indus Waters Treaty. We have virtually no relations with Pakistan at this particular stage. They know the overwhelming force of the Indian Armed Forces, the Air Force primarily in this particular case. They know the technology that we employ by way of guided munitions. These are not lost upon them. They don't need pictures of their own hangars which have been struck.
Yeah. They are seeing it in person.
They are seeing it in person.
Sir, one question that मैं भूल गया पूछना, and that is related to Israel, because when I was reading all the weapons that we were using in Operation Sindoor, I think so many of them from Israel, right?
Many.
And that actually underscores the importance of this alliance with Israel.
Yeah.
But so many people are, now asking questions from the government. What was the need to go for the Prime Minister to go there and just before the war? But this only when people actually read this.
This is why.
Yeah.
The Rampage missile.
I mean, not just that, sir. So many weapon systems that we used.
The helmet-mounted sight.
Yeah.
Right, which the pilot wears of the French-made Rafale fighter is Israeli.
Yeah.
I can go on. I can give you 10 examples right here of the critical weapons which Israel provides us with.
Yeah.
We have our foreign policy. We've stated that repeatedly. We maintain relations with Tehran, very close ones, which is why we've got a couple of these ships coming across in this crisis.
True.
But we need Israel to protect us with their weapons, which we co-manufacture in many cases over here.
True.
Let's never forget that.
And we should not forget that, yeah.
And by all means, slam Israel in our foreign policy for whatever it is you feel doesn't work, whether it's Gaza, excessive loss of lives over there. That's one thing, and that's a debate. But
there is something called strategic silence also.
We have to protect our national defense interests.
So we should keep that in mind.
Yeah, 100%.
So thank you so much.
What a lovely
brilliant discussion. And अभी बहुत सारे questions तो बच गए, but कुछ पढ़ने भी देते हैं लोगों को. And there are so many details that human stories. Yeah, human stories. और ये बहुत ही मैं कहूँगा कि सबको पढ़नी चाहिए. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
My friend.
Lovely
Appreciate
discussion.
it.
Thank you.